It's a question of, helping them to see their strengths, see what they're, still able to do, and help them to build on that. And also a lot of education within the school system and, with their peers to
Hmm.
help them understand what the child's been through and to understand that this is the same child and that, they just might look different. And through those types of intervention, we're able to help a child get back on track and build a new sense of normal, a new kind of foundation for how they see themselves and where they're going to be able to go.
For
Sort
sure.
of.
What is going on? Welcome to the School Site Corner. I'm your host, Joe Sims. Today, I am speaking with Dr. Kate Lund. Dr. Kate Lund, she's a licensed clinical psychologist, a keynote speaker, as well as a published author. So thank you for joining us on the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Most definitely. Before we jump into a lot of the things that I want to talk about today, could you give us a little background of who you are and kind of how you came to be?
Sure. I mean, sort of how I came to be a psychologist and sort of
Yes,
where I
you're a
am
clinical
now.
psychologist, and that doesn't happen overnight. But a lot of times, from my experience, I see that people transform and they kind of get into it for a reason. So, what are your reasons for getting into that field?
Right, absolutely. Well, I think one of the primary reasons, Joe, is that I grew up with a condition called hydrocephalus, which essentially can happen at any time in our lives. But for me, it happened when I was 4. And essentially, what that means is hydrocephalus is a condition where the cerebral spinal fluid isn't circulating as it should, and it causes pressure to build up on the brain. And the good news is it can be managed with something called a shunt, which circulates the cerebrospinal fluid for one. Problem is, shunts break down. And so as a child, I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital getting my shunt fixed. Had to come back to school looking different, not really able to do a lot of the things that the other girls were able to do, like gymnastics and, kind of rough and tumble, hanging upside down in the jungle gym at recess. Just felt a little different, felt a little odd in a sense, had a lot of strange haircuts because each time a shunt had to be revised, your head gets shaved and you come back to school and you just don't look like everybody else. So that
Sure.
you know, made me feel a little bit different, set apart. And I think those early experiences really sparked an interest in me, for me, in um, helping people through challenge. That evolved over time, but that's sort of really what it came to, and what it's come to, and really is the foundational reason for why I chose to go into psychology. I focused on psych classes and psych courses and anything I could psychology through college, and really built from there as a result of these early experiences.
Now, you talk about the shunt piece. How long of a process was that? Did you miss extended periods of time because of that?
Yeah, it varied. So when I was 4, this whole thing was diagnosed, and I would say, once a year for until I was probably 14, I had some sort of an event, some sort of a shunt revision. Some were more simple than others,
Hmm.
but I always missed, at least a month of school. When I was 10, I had a significant setback where there were some other complications with the shunt revision, and I literally missed, I would say, upwards of 4 to 5 months of my fifth grade year. And
Wow.
that was very, very hard. Fortunately, I had a lot of support from my teachers. I was at a very supportive school. They really kind of understood as best they could and knew what was going on. So helped me to stay on track academically. My parents were extremely supportive. And one thing I'll say there was, when things were good, they encouraged me to, I was just like everybody else.
Hmm.
They, expected me to do the chores just like my brother. I had expectations. I had things I had to sort of accomplish within the context of being a member of the family. So it wasn't like, I was defined by this challenge. It was just something that, you know, I lived with.
For sure. And that's
Yeah.
a part of interest with this show being for parents and everything.
Mhm.
Knowing that you went through this and having supportive parents, that must have meant the world to you. Or did you see it back then, or is it something more you saw as an adult?
I think I felt it back then, but it, wasn't until I became an adult that I could really sort of conceptualize what
Sure.
it was that they did for me, what kind of a foundation they helped me to build, because they really didn't focus, particularly in the times when things were going well. They didn't focus on what I couldn't do. They more focused on what I could do. And I think that's such an important point for all of our kids, regardless of what the struggle is, because we've all got challenges. Kids are gonna have challenges. They're gonna face things that are hard. They're gonna have things in their kind of day to day that aren't easy for them. But we have to really encourage them to not only move through and beyond those types of things, but also to focus on kind of where are their strengths, what are they good at, what can they do to sort of balance things out and build a sense of competence and confidence.
I like how you say that. My company is called ETG, and that stands for Embrace the Grind. And so,
Ooh, I love it.
a lot of the things in the mindset that I teach is overcoming weaknesses to shine.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's what you've been doing and help students do.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
how do you help students do that directly, whether it's in the past or currently?
Well, you really want to get to know the kid, kind of their full context, and
Mm,
sort of understand who they are. And through kind of, the relationship that you build in that way, in understanding them, kind of help them to identify their strengths, help them to figure out, how it might be possible to build on those strengths. You want to believe in the possibility and help them believe in the possibility for themselves. You want to help them to take risks, calculated risks,
mm.
obviously, and to kind of push beyond their comfort zone. Those are all, in the big picture things that I focus on. And I focus on those things with parents as well, because I do a lot of work with sort of parents who have kids who are struggling.
What kind of things do you do with the parents? Is it coaching or just awareness?
Yeah, it's coaching, it's awareness. Oftentimes, parents come to me sort of as a clinical psychologist for themselves to work on sort of anxiety, depression, that sort of thing. But then, oftentimes we find that they have kids who are struggling, and then we kind of shift gears into more of a coaching model in terms of how the parents can support their kids through and beyond their challenges, how the parents can help their kids to believe in themselves, the power of the parent believing in their child despite things that might not be going well, that sort of
Mm,
thing.
understood. Now, I'm sure there was a lot of things you said bullying as a kid, and I experienced bullying to some degree and I see what it is, but I couldn't imagine having something that, lasted long term. Would you say that yours was more long term? You constantly had to deal with it throughout schooling?
Um, in and out. I would say that there were periods of time, particularly around that incident I mentioned in fifth grade,
Hmm.
where I was gone for a very long time. I came back, I looked really different. Like, I mean, we're talking really weird haircut and just, kids around fifth grade, sixth grade, they haven't learned in many cases yet how to appreciate and embrace this idea of individual difference.
Sure.
And that's another really important point that, I work with parents on the importance of helping their kids to understand and embrace individual difference as a way of understanding that we're not all the same, and acceptance in that, is very important. But I would say that that was the worst bullying that I experienced, was around that time, that sort of early adolescence, before kids had sort of, embraced that idea that, hey, she went through something. It's all right. She's still the
Sure.
same person. So that was very, very challenging, but it got better from there. And it got better also as I learned to understand myself, understand what I, you know, internalize what I could do. And that really helped me to defend against bullying, because in my own mind, people could call me names, say I look, different or stupid or weird.
Hmm.
But it wasn't going to bug me.
Like, what would you say that is that you built within yourself to kind of just put that aside and keep going?
Yeah, and it's easier said than done. I'm not meaning to make it have sounded easy.
Hmm.
It was a process that had to evolve over time. And I think, that's why I mentioned sort of the importance of helping kids to embrace their strengths to help sort of balance out if there's a bullying situation going on. Because for me, it was tennis. I was a tennis player, and that was sort of a non-contact sport that I got into pretty early on, and it was something I could do pretty much all the way through. And so I had a really strong group of tennis friends, and sort of I came to identify myself around in those years as a tennis player, and that was really really helpful. A lot of supportive folks, coaches, and other tennis parents, and my own parents. So I think that piece for me was super helpful. And one thing to mention as well, I wasn't the best tennis player out there, right? But I did the very best I could within my context, and I learned early that that was the most important thing for me.
Yeah,
Because my medical situation, probably made it so that, I wasn't going to be the number one player all the time, right?
sure.
And that was okay. But I would say that having something like that was very helpful for me in balancing out and defending against the bullying situation. So, you know, easier said than done, but a process that we can help sort of to evolve for all of our kids, because all of our kids have strengths. They have
Mhm.
things that they're good at. And if we can identify those, if we can help the child to identify those and to believe in those, we can help them foster them over time.
That's perfect. A lot of the work that I do as a school psychologist is evaluating the kids and help identifying their strengths and weaknesses. And I've
Yes.
actually just created this program. It's called the Elite Student. And one of the first things that we go through is identifying, basically getting to know yourself. Kind of goes along with what you just said. You
Yeah.
identified areas that you are strong in and use
Mhm.
those to your advantage. And so I can just resonated with that when you said it,
Yes, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. What a great program. And
for sure.
so you're working on that sort of with each of the students that you work with in the school?
Well, not in the school, but it's a coaching program that I have
Ah,
virtually. And
oh,
so
got
working
it.
with the kids one on one or in a group setting to where we break down strategies on how to identify yourself. If it is putting yourself out there and trying tennis, trying golf, you have to do it in order to see if you're good at it or not. And then you find value in it if you are, if that is a strength of yours.
Exactly. Absolutely. Spot on. I love that. Nice.
Yeah. So identifying yourself and then you move past that to where you have to overcome a lot of these personal things. You have a book, I believe it's called Bounce.
Ah, yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Bounce.
Can you tell me a little bit about that and maybe some inspiration behind that?
Sure, absolutely. So the book is called Bounce, Help Your Child Build Resilience and Thrive in School, Sports, and Life. And the inspiration, much of what we've already talked about, sort of my own experiences were sort of a catalyst for the book, but then coupled with, the 20 years of work that I've done with kids and families across domains and the struggles that they've had. I've done a lot of work with kids, who have had serious medical conditions, burn injuries, that sort of thing. So I took a lot of the sort of themes that I saw across time and came up with these seven sort of pillars of, what I see as important in building resilience as one moves through early childhood into adolescence. And really, the pillars apply to all of us across the lifespan. And essentially, what they are, just very quickly in a nutshell, is this ability to tolerate frustration and manage our emotions, navigate friendships and social pressures. And a big piece in there is this idea of understanding and embracing individual difference. Um, and then, sustaining focus and attention, developing courage, building motivation, confidence, and finally, how do we become optimistic? And how does optimism play into this idea of resilience. So those are all of that's sort of the book in a nutshell.
Hmm. When you said optimism playing into being resilient, like what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so what that means is, it's our ability to see beyond challenge. So
Mhm.
we might have a challenge in front of us, but we need to be able to see the possibility on the other side of that challenge. And that's really sort of the core of that principle, or that pillar. And, how to help kids, and all of us really, to cultivate that sense of optimism. We can do that through helping them see what's going well as opposed to just what the challenge is, and maybe help them kind of write those things down at the end of each day to balance the lens, right? Because as human beings, we're kind of wired to go towards the negative, just sort
Yeah,
of out of the gate. So we really have to do a little bit of work to balance that lens out. So, I have folks fill out what we call a daily wins journal,
mhm,
which at the end of the day, we jot down 3 to 5 things that went well that day that we easily may have overlooked had we not taken time, stopped, taken time to do that. Um, so it's that kind of a thing.
yeah,
And you know, our research shows us that the more optimistic we are, ultimately, the better we're able to bounce back from challenge.
for sure. And I think it's more of like when you set your focus on something, you're more likely to go towards it. So if you have an optimistic way of looking at something, you're probably gonna go, even if it's not perfect the way you see it, it's gonna be in the positive direction. And a lot of the processing that I think through just for myself on a personal or a daily basis,
Hmm.
things that I did well, but also things that I, can work on improving. And you're right. I think we naturally go towards the negative in things. And so I've had to train myself to focus on what are some small things that I did? What are some small wins? Just because those are gonna add up and be in the bank to where I have enough juice and enough optimism to overcome challenges when they inevitably come.
Exactly. And that's such an important thing that you just said, because inevitably we're all going to face challenge,
Hmm.
regardless of what that is, right? And so to have that sort of foundation built up, have sort of those wins in the bank, as you say, so important. So important.
Gotcha. Now, something that you mentioned, transforming or being going from being different to like a new normal.
Hmm.
Are there any things that like specifics that you can share on how to do that? Like seeing yourself as different to just a new normal?
Right. Yeah, and that's really, a lot of the same principles apply. It's just that the process is a bit harder. Like, for example, if a child um, has sustained a serious burn injury and they're
Mhm.
coming back to school looking very different, and that different look really isn't going to go away. Like, my hair grew back, right? And that kind of a thing. But if a child has sustained a serious burn injury, oftentimes their appearance will be different forever. So I'm using this as an example because I worked in this domain for quite a while, and and worked within the context of schools as well, and helped kids to re-enter the school system. And it's a question of helping them to see their strengths, see what they're still able to do, and help them to build on that. And also a lot of education within the school system, and with their peers, to
Mhm.
help them understand what the child's been through, and to understand that this is the same child, and that they just might look different. And through those types of intervention, we're able to help a child get back on track and build a new sense of normal, a new kind of foundation for how they see themselves and where they're going to be able to go.
For
Sort of
sure.
helping them to see the possibility beyond this different version of themselves.
Yeah, and I'm thinking personally because I'd imagine this isn't an easy task, but something that I experienced, and it's nothing significant, but I have an underbite. And
Hmm.
as a kid, I constantly was unaware of the underbite. I kind of spoke a little weird,
Hmm.
um, unclear at times, but as an adult, I'm consciously aware of it to where I've reestablished my new norm of like, hey, this is just who I am. I can't change this. I mean, there are
Hmm.
surgeries and such, but it's like that's not point. I mean, it's pointless.
Hmm.
So what does this life look like with me and this underbite? So I relearned how to speak and how to articulate in a certain way, but I kind of had to just throw away that old notion of, oh, I have an underbite and using it as an excuse for, certain things.
Exactly. Such a good point, right? And so that's the thing. And it's helping a child to appreciate themselves within their own unique context. Whether there's been sort of a significant event like a burn injury, or just any challenge that we might encounter or that kids might encounter out there. And that's a really, really important point, in addition to helping them see possibility and all of that on the other side of challenge, to really appreciate who they are within their own unique context, because all of our contexts are different, right?
Hmm.
And that's such an important piece. And oftentimes, young kids and adolescents and all that, they're doing that whole social comparison thing, he's got it better than me, and I'm,
Yes.
that kind of thing. So really fostering that appreciation from the inside out with kids, in terms of who they are and what is their context and how is that unique and special, and what can they do with that. And that's a big piece of helping kids to embrace and understand this idea of individual difference as well.
And I think we have to let go of some of our own biases when we're helping people so that way we can see the full context and we're
Hmm.
not, in a sense, limiting how we see a child, how we see a patient or something, keeping that scope wide open.
Absolutely, that's a huge point. And yeah, keeping the lens wide open and seeing the possibilities ourselves as, clinicians or coaches or whatever.
Hmm. Are there any new things that you're currently working on, or what are you currently filling your time with these days?
So right now, I'm a therapist, and so I do that, doing all virtual work right now.
Okay.
Um, and I'm also working with a startup company, actually, um, uh, doing learning disability evaluations with kids. So I do a little bit of the school psych like work.
Yeah.
And that is a really important focus for me, because it's helping kids to do just what we've talked about, kind of identifying the strengths and weaknesses through the testing, and then really working with the parents on, you know, kind of talking through the challenges, but also helping them to see the possibilities on the other side of those challenges, embrace the strengths that are coming out, and then putting the whole picture together to help the child maximize their potential. So that's sort of what the focus is there.
Great.
Um, and then beyond that, I'm filling my time with my kids. I've got 14-year-old twins,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
kind of an active family life. My husband and I are avid golfers,
Okay.
and I'm also training our puppy to be a therapy dog, to go out and work in children's hospitals.
Are you doing the training, or is it just you're taking them to someone and they're doing it?
Well, I we go to classes together, but I'm doing the
Okay.
training.
Gotcha.
So I'm being trained to train him, I guess. Or yeah, that's yeah, what I
It's
would
kind of
say
like
from
that
a
model
hospital.
working with parents to help their kids. You're being
Yes.
trained to help your little one.
Yep, exactly,
So how's that
exactly.
going so far? Because I think about Pavlov and conditioning and how we have to instill certain things. So how's the training going?
It's going pretty well. In fact, I mean, well, it's going pretty well, but we've hit a couple bumps lately, because Wally was neutered about 2 weeks ago, and he
Hmm.
hasn't been able to exercise as he needs to. He's a puppy,
Hmm.
10-month-old puppy, and he's been a little bonkers. So we're going to get back on track now that he's running again.
Okay. And you said you have twins, 14-year-old twins?
Yep, 14-year-old twin boys, and they're fantastic. They keep us on our toes for sure.
Okay.
And, interesting point with that is that they're very different. They're very good friends, but they're very, very different. One of them is extremely social, struggles in school a little bit. So we've kind of really had to help him to embrace his strengths as a way of moving through and beyond some of those challenges in the classroom, and sort of
Hmm.
coming to a place where he's able to, and this is an ongoing process, but a place where he's able to really believe in himself. Um, the other one is extremely academic, really rigorous school, and has not had those struggles in the classroom, but has also in different ways needed to come to a place where he fully embraces, who he is and is able to believe in himself fully. So the a lot of what we've talked about here today has been unfolding in our own house as
I
well.
understand. And that's usually
Yeah.
how it is. I have two daughters of my own, and a lot of the things that I actually talking with parents on this show, bringing parents on and talking through strategies, that's one thing that I've heard consistently. Kids are not the same. They can be
Right.
siblings, but they're going to be night and day, or something's going to be different where you have to see the child individually, and even though they're twins, they're completely different. So just keeping that
Precisely. Yeah, it's so interesting. And if I mean, exact same exposures, right? They're twins, and so
hmm
early life, whatever, exact same exposures, and just so different. And it's really been important to see them as individuals and help them each to foster their strengths in a way that makes sense and fits for them. Um, and so far, so good. We're early in the adolescence, and we're starting freshman year next year. So,
okay.
hopefully all will be good.
Well, good luck with that. I know that that can be another transitional phase, just getting into high school, the social groups, and I think that's when I started with my sports. So developing
Mm.
my sports identity, playing football and lacrosse. So I definitely connected when you said you got into it, tennis, and you developed those friends around that sport. It's very true.
So, so important. Yeah, and I'm seeing that with both of my boys right now. And of course, yeah, the tennis for me. One of them has gotten very into crew and rowing. And so that's what he's focused on. And the other one, he's still sort of experimenting and seeing what is a good fit for him. And I'm confident something will come into focus, and just giving him those opportunities is
For sure.
feeling really important.
Yeah, this is the last thing. It was someone I was speaking to, and they gave me 3 E's, where it was like educate, and then provide experiences, and then that's based on exposure. So if
Mm,
you are
yep.
unsure about something, you just have to keep putting yourself out there, getting those experiences, exposing yourself, educating yourself about what's going on, and then something will come because you do have that deliberate effort towards figuring it out.
Exactly. That's such a huge point. It's that sort of intentional
hmm
focus on kind of having the experiences and understanding what's out there and how does it feel and how does it fit, and helping kids to develop self-awareness in that way is so important.
Yeah. How do you practice that personally for yourself? That self-awareness, even as an adult right now.
Right. Just really trying to be kind of aware of what I'm sort of experiencing, kind of how I'm experiencing, what's going on with the boys, or, out there in the world and in the family, and just trying to take time each day to reflect and think about what I've observed and experienced during a particular day, because it's so easy for us to just, you know, move right through
hmm
whatever it is that's going on in a day and get to the end of the day and be like, "Oof, better turn on some, stupid TV or whatever." And so taking that time to reflect is so important. And I think that's one of the main ways that I kind of keep my self-awareness and my awareness in general going.
That's awesome. That's such an easy thing to do, but it's sometimes difficult just when you get in the routine of things. But if you take that time, reflect, I think great things will come from it though. So, all right.
Absolutely. It's slowing down, right? It's slowing down and taking that breath, through the day and at the end of the day.
And as we were talking about, I feel myself kind of just slowing down a little bit, just being a little more reflective. So I love it. A lot of times my wife, she thinks I reflect too much, just because I'll process a lot of things and I'm like, hey, what about this? So I've had to learn to tame that down a little bit and keep it in here or
Right.
maybe write it just because it is very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, I do thank you for your time and showing up today. Is there any way that you would like for people to find you or find your work or follow up with you if they have any questions?
Well, my website is in process. So that's not awesome right now. It's in
Okay.
process. It's gonna be done soon. So I guess I can give you that. It's www.katelundspeaks.com. And of course I'm on LinkedIn. Um, and those are, I think, the primary ways right now. to get in touch with me. And, more than happy to connect with folks and, talk more at any point.
For sure. And I'll make sure I just include that so they can find you. But you did say Kate Lund Speaks.
Yes,
All
exactly.
right, perfect.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and joining me today on the School Site Corner. Until next time, take care.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being here.